Today, I want to talk about Kaspa again. I don't do a lot on this because I'm not a big proof of work type, but I do think the technology behind Kaspa and the connections it has makes for some really interesting opportunities, even though it has gone up so much in price until this point, it can go a lot higher. And all of this began with this tweet I found about how Kaspa seems to move in 4 month cycles compared to Bitcoin's 4 year. And I will come back and expand upon that. But it seems that a lot of other projects out there are all really pulling from the kind of ideas and even the technology and the approaches that Kaspa has, and a lot of them tie back into the people behind Kaspa as well. So, for example, we've got examples of the protocols that come before Kaspa are called out in the white papers of Algo. You've got comparable references in Ethereum and Polkadot, and that all comes down to the Ghost and Spectre proposals and the ideas around how to address each of those issues. And I have done a video on Kaspa in the past that explains a little bit more about how the consensus and protocol actually work if you want to know a bit more on that. We've also got some highly positive opinions on the people behind Kaspa as well, from the founder of AVAX. And they're also in the Avalanche white papers, and ETH actually bases their consensus on these guys' previous work. And we've also got some comparisons in Filecoin as well, which it seems that there are a lot of projects out there that highly respect the people behind Kaspa, and I think that says a lot in the crypto industry at this point in time. Now here's a little bit more about the tech, and it is talking more about the actual coding of the protocol itself, but it does explain how that impacts Kaspa's performance as well.
You guys also have a Rust implementation on Kaspa currently, right? You guys did rewrite the client, I assume?
Mm-hmm. So one thing that's important to understand about Kaspa, the unique property that I keep coming back to is that the throughput and the confirmation time and everything else is not governed by the security. If you take Bitcoin or Ethereum and crank it up to 100 blocks a second, then you would just destroy the security, right? You will have tons of orphans, and because of that, the largest chain would not grow. Most of the work would go to the trash, and it would be very, very cheap to attack the network. That's essentially the problem, right? So in Kaspa, this isn't the problem. In Kaspa, you can increase the throughput as much as you want, and things would still be secure. So now it's reasonable to ask me, okay, so why don't you just have 10,000 blocks a second right now? Okay, you say that it would be secure, so why don't you do it? So the thing is that higher throughputs increase the hardware requirements. So we are in this unique position where we get to choose how expensive it should be to run a node, and then make the throughput as high as possible without exceeding these hardware or budget requirements. And now, if you have a much more efficient implementation, then you could run at much higher throughputs on the same hardware. That's essentially the definition of efficiency. The thing of beauty here is that the Rust implementation is so much more efficient than the Golang implementation that the network can run at 10 blocks per second, at 3,000 transactions per second on the layer 1, right? No layer 2s, no tricks, just on the layer 1, 3,000 transactions per second, where nodes are running on hardware which costs like $100 or $150.
You guys.
Whoops. And I do want to call out another comparison just off of the coding language there, that is Rust. That is also what Kaspa has as well, and I have done a video in the past explaining how Kaspa, in a lot of ways, is the POS version of Kaspa. So this is a little bit more before we get into the price talk about the monumental accomplishment that Kaspa has hit right now and is continuing to expand upon, with having a proof of work protocol that can operate at the TPS it does, while achieving a very high consensus rate.
I developed the hobby of devising alternative consensus protocols based on proof of work. It started with Ghost Protocol, Spectre, and Phantom GhostDAG. But none of these protocols, nor any other consensus protocol, achieves what we set out to do in DAGnight. So about 3 years ago, we set out on a journey to solve the following problem. We were trying to achieve a proof of work protocol that is resilient to 50% to up to 50% attackers without knowing anything about the network delay. Okay, so Bitcoin, or in its formal name, Nakamoto Consensus, or Phantom GhostDAG, these protocols assume something about network delay. Bitcoin assumes network delay is much smaller than 10 minutes. Phantom GhostDAG assumes a different parameter, but all of these works do not assume something about the network delay. And we want to do something that, we want to devise a protocol that does not assume anything. And this is no easy task. It took us about 3 years. And there's a good reason why it's not an easy task. It seems to contradict known impossibility results in the consensus literature.
Okay, so here is the main content that I was wanting to actually highlight that comes from this tweet right here. Essentially how Kaspa moves in a cycle that is 12 times quicker compared to Bitcoin's price action. And what this says is that by March of about 2024, we could be somewhere around 40 cents. And if this pattern continues to hold, by March of 2025, we could be as high as $8 per Kaspa, which would be an 80x compared to where we are right now. So I did map that out on my own, and I have a couple of thoughts on it as well. So I was able to get that to match up, even with the consolidation that Kaspa has around this 10 cent mark. It is holding this price trend in this upward channel. And if you look at the RSI and your we are almost at the same point that we were back at the 1.5 cent mark. And from there, we went up about, let's call it about 235%. So if we make that same assumption here and we go up about, I'm not the best on this thing because I'm not a chart guy. But if we go up about 238%, that puts us at the 34 cent mark, which is towards the upper end of this channel. And in March, we could be at about that 40 cent mark as well. And it is interesting because if you compare the total charts of Kaspa against Bitcoin, there are a lot of comparisons to be made, especially if you put each of them into a log scale. And we do have about 78% of the circulating supply of Kaspa out right now, which is a very good thing in terms of price action. There aren't a lot of new tokens that can come out that can impact the supply and demand. Same thing for Bitcoin as well. We're at about 93% on that. And we have this general uptrend that's kind of a logarithmic curve that we do for Bitcoin as well, even though we are more at this point here in terms of Kaspa, because it is kind of just a line up. And I think that if you look at the comparison in between the two protocols, then you can kind of make the justification that this 4 months cycle time is actually mathematically possible. And I was not able to find a real obvious 12x connection, but I'm also not really comparing anything too technically advanced. And even though you can't make any direct 12x correlations out of this, if you begin to play around with the comparisons in TPS and the block times, you can get to about a 7x to 42x improvement for the quickness of Kaspa, and that 12x does lie in between those. And just as a reminder, the Bitcoin halving is controlled to every 210,000 blocks, where it gets twice as hard to actually create one. So if you add that in there, then this idea that Kaspa essentially moves on a cycle that is 12 times faster than Bitcoin does make a lot of sense. And that means that all of these price targets at this point in time seem as if they're actually pretty achievable.